Okay, so welcome everyone. Delighted to have you here. My name is Suzanne Carowin. I am the Vice President of Marketing Communications at NAFA. And I want to thank you for joining us on tonight's webinar, where we're going to look at a really interesting topic. So we're going to look tonight at the relationship between long-term care and housing wealth. Really interesting topic. We'll build on this over the course of the coming months. But this is a new venture for NAFA. We're bringing this to consumers to really provide awareness for the options that you have in ensuring your financial security. And so if this is your first time encountering NAFA and you're not really sure what I'm saying NAIFA, give me 2 seconds to tell you who we are. We're the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. We are a national not-for-profit organization headquartered outside of Washington, D.C. 50 state chapters. We've got 25,000 members all over the nation. And what's interesting about us is we're 130 years old. So for 130 years, we have been advocating and educating and working with consumers to, again, largely on risk protection products, financial planning, retirement planning, college funding, property and casualty, all of the things that would come under there about being able to ensure that you have financial wellness and financial security. And this is a new endeavor for us where we are trying to really, especially post-COVID, come together and go direct to consumers to bring you really good information and move the needle on both financial literacy and how many Americans have access, et cetera, and are taking advantage of the risk protection products out there that can help you with your financial security. And so one of the things that we want to do is to make sure that you understand that we are akin to the American Dental Association, the American Medical Association. Think of us as the good housekeeping seal of approval for people in the financial services professional. So if you're thinking about that, your needs, help, et cetera, please think about going and finding an advisor who's a NAFA advisor, because all of our members do a very important thing, which is ascribe to a code of ethics that put the client's best interest first. And so you can come and talk to any of our advisors. It doesn't cost you anything. Come and talk to them, and you can be able to understand, all of your options on the table. So that's what we're here tonight to do, is talk about options, talk about, have you thought about how all of these things come together? And just know that in the coming months, we really are basing it on your feedback. So if you have a topic you'd like us to cover, well, we've got 25,000 experts out there who cover the entire range of different areas within financial services. So feel free to give us that feedback in the survey evaluation questionnaire that we'll send after this webinar. Feel free during the webinar as well to use the chat function or the Q&A function to ask any questions you have of our experts. So without any further ado, let me introduce to you who our experts are tonight. So we're delighted to have Harlan Accola, who is a loyal member of NAFA since 2015. That's important to us. We like to have our members stay with us a long time. And what they do is also advocate on your behalf, on the consumer's behalf, at both the state level, the interstate, which would be kind of like your agency levels, and at the federal level. And so our work together of our 25,000 members, people like Kristin, that I'll introduce in a second, and Harlan, are out there advocating for consumers. In fact, our estimate is that we actually are helping to protect 90 million American households. So we're very proud of that fact. So Harlan is based in Marshfield, Wisconsin. He's the National Reverse Mortgage Director at Fairway Independent Mortgage Company, and he holds a certified reverse mortgage professional designation. Kristin Alfheim is also with us, a loyal member since 2004. She's an advisor at Retirement Dynamix in Appleton, Wisconsin. So we've got nice Midwest representation tonight. And she holds her certification for long-term care as well as her retirement income certified professional designation. So they're also going to share some personal stories, I believe, of how they've met and they've come together and the work that they have done and the good work that they're doing for the American people. So with no further ado, Harlan and Kristin, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. We really appreciate the opportunity to make a difference for the members. I was on a call today with Senator Mike Krapos, who is the Senate Finance Committee chairman and has been a senator out of Idaho for a number of years. One of the things that we talked about today was long-term care. It is absolutely amazing and shocking to me that there isn't more talked about at the Washington level. But the reason there isn't is because there's really no solution. They're very concerned about what's going on. They know that it's a problem. But did you ever hear that come up in any of the presidential debates? Did you even hear it come up at the level of the other scenario of even local elections? It's not talked about that much. And it should be, because about 50% of people, including both of my parents before they passed away, needed long-term care. And a lot of people talk about life insurance. They talk about car insurance. They talk about all kinds of insurances. They don't talk about long-term care, which is one of the most necessary and needed insurances. And if we talk about COVID, over 60,000 people died in nursing homes. This is a pretty concerning thing that is going on right now, and most people are ill prepared for. Kristin and I have worked together for years to help clients to plan for something that hopefully will never happen. That's what insurance is for. When you buy homeowners insurance, you don't hope your house burns down. But this is something that is absolutely critical to make sure that we cover, and we're going to cover that in with how housing wealth can help that, because there's so many people that think they can't afford long-term care. And that's really because they put a little bit too much money in the wrong place. Now, I'm going to ask, Kristin and I have worked together even with some of our personal friends. She's done a long-term care policy for my sister. I sat at her parents' table years ago with the reverse mortgage. And Kristin is a true expert in understanding. She's an RICP. For those of you who don't know that, that's Retirement Income Certified Professional. Retirement income is really important. People say money isn't everything, but it's reasonably close to oxygen. You kind of need it, especially during retirement. She makes sure that she is helping people. She's not one of these people that's a stock jockey and trying to figure out which hot stock to buy, but making sure that people are protected and that the end result is what they want it to be. You'll notice that behind me is a picture of my 4 sons. That's one of the reasons why I'm in the business. I'm concerned about them, their wives, and my grandchildren. Because if we don't do something about this, we have a huge problem. So before we kind of get into some of the questions that I have for Kristin, is I want to just remind you a little bit of the life cycle of money. Everybody has 3 buckets of wealth who owns a home. Bucket 1 is your bucket. It's your ability to make money. It's your ability to make commissions or make money from your job, your business, whatever the case may be, and later pensions, Social Security, retirement money. Bucket number 2 is the bucket that Kristin and the financial planners and the people at NAFA take care of. 401k, stocks, bonds, life insurance, any lump sum savings, money that's put aside for the future. People try to save maybe 5% of their income, 20% of their income out of that top rectangle from 18 to 61 years old, when people have their pre-retirement income and they're trying to take care of all of their regular expenses. And on top of it, they're also trying to put some money aside for the future. What a lot of people don't realize is that at the same time that all this is going on, people are sending our industry in the mortgage industry, bucket 3, they are sending millions, billions, trillions of dollars. Right now, it's $7.7 trillion is sitting in people's homes over the age of 62. Just that one asset class, because they've sent us 20, 25, 30, sometimes 40% of their income for the last 20, 30, 40 years. There's a lot of money sitting in the house. So when people get down, and we'll talk about these 3 buckets throughout so it all makes sense, when people get down to the bottom rectangle and they're in the wallet of the post-retirement income, usually bucket 1 goes down. There's not as much coming in from bucket 1. Now it's just Social Security. They're not working anymore. They're working less. And then they go to people like Kristin and say, hey, I need some money to supplement that income. And many people did not put as much money in there, or certainly not have as much protection from a life insurance and a long-term care scenario. In fact, less than 5% of people have long-term care. And so because of that, we want to make sure that everybody knows, in order to change the way retirement is done in this country, we must change the perception of putting trillions of dollars in bucket 3 and never touching it and never doing anything with it. And then tell yourself that you are going to give all of that to your kids when you pass away. The truth is your kids don't want your house. 99% of the time, they will sell your house. They will take the life insurance proceeds. They will turn your house into cash, but there is so many better ways to use it. So I'm going to say something profound, and you might want to write this down if you're taking notes. the more money that the American homeowner puts into bucket 3, the less money they have to put into bucket 2. And you say, wow, that's something to write down. It is, because people are putting so much of their wealth into bucket 3 with a paid off house that they have no liquidity. And so they don't have as much money to put into life insurance, long-term care insurance, investments for the future. And many times Chris will go to somebody's place and they'll say, you know, we really agree with this, but we just don't have the money to do it. Well, they're sitting on a $300,000 paid off house that they've put all of their money into and not even drawing any income from. The basics of what we're going to talk about is the importance of using housing wealth properly. Because if money is coming out of bucket 3, after all, you put money in there, why can't you take it out? You put money into a 401k, you take it out. You put money into an IRA or a life insurance policy, you take it out. What's wrong with putting money into your house and taking it out? So, Chris, like myself, you have sat at thousands of kitchen tables over the years.
Indeed.
What do you see as the big threat over and over and over? You're a specialist, a professional in long-term care. Talk a little bit about the shortfalls and the crisis that's going to be coming if people don't pay attention to this very important thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great topic, and I appreciate you having me on. And my experience and my understanding of the need on a much larger scale comes from Washington as well. Being on the board of the Alzheimer's Association for a number of years, I've gone to DC for them. And statistically, just one disease by 2038 is going, the cost of Medicare and Medicaid on just one of the vicious diseases like Alzheimer's is expected to outpace the defense budget. So it is one of the issues, one of the few issues, as we know, that both blue ties and red ties can agree on. Healthcare is the problem, and yet it's very difficult to come up with a solution. What we do know is that there's not going to be any more federal help tomorrow than there is today. If anything, there's going to be less. So we must figure out our own plans. And sometimes we need to start getting creative. Our grandfathers' programs don't necessarily solve today's problems. And this really is a point where Harlan comes into play. My job and what I do when I talk to people is really a retirement distribution person. So my job is to try and find the pitfalls of retirement. You spend all your life getting up the hill with your assets and you get ready to retire, and then you have to come down the hill. And down the hill, you are in danger of certain things, and healthcare is one of them. Volatility, inflation, healthcare, taxes, all of it. So the first thing that I do is look to see, do you have enough money to live happily ever after? That's rule number one. Rule number two is, how do we protect against the dangers of the path down the hill? The number one being the most dangerous thing is healthcare. So when we look at the plan, we have to look at all of the tools available to be able to provide the foundation of a good path coming down the hill. We have to look at all tools necessary. Our grandfathers and perhaps our fathers all taught us, pay off your mortgage, hurry up, pay it as fast as you can, make extra payments, do all these things. But they were also living in a different world. They were living in a world where the interest rates were double digits. Interest rates were so much higher. So you couldn't afford to have that interest payment out there. In today's world, it's different. We must look at equity of houses as an asset, not just as a roof and beams. You cannot break off a piece of siding or take out a window if you need long-term care in a short period of time. You have to utilize your assets. I often see the house is a solid 25 to 45% of a client's overall net worth. 25 to 45% of something that they have zero access to makes no sense. And we have to first break down those thought processes and look at things from a different direction, from outside the box process, and see how it can do good in each household.
Well, you know, the problem with in fact, when you're talking about the parents and grandparents, this is the phone that I use. This is a rotary dial phone, Chris. I don't know if you're old enough to remember what these are.
Oh, I do. I do.
And when Chris is talking about grandparents and parents, they lived in a very different world. It so happens that we happen to use cell phones now. These you can get, by the way, on eBay for $45. They're really, yeah, $45, and they still work, Chris. It even says on the back, Bell System property not for sale, but I bought one. I don't care what they said on the back. And it still works. You can plug it in and it still works. It's very difficult to take a selfie with it. It's very difficult to get on the internet with it, but it still works. So why don't we still use those? Because there are better ways to do it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people with their mortgage that are still back in the 80s. Right. And that is something that, like you said, we have to break down that thought process. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things is there's all kinds of people that tell us, but I don't need a reverse mortgage. I'm doing fine, which they might be today. But obviously, we're not going to go into a lot of personal things. But your parents, when we sat at their house, they didn't need a reverse mortgage. They were fine. Why did they get one?
Yeah, so I'll share how that worked out, because it's a great example of a creative use of a tool. In my parents' case, financially, they're fine. They have no issues. They're also heavy on land and property assets. I think a total of 3 home properties, house number 1, cottage number 2, and miscellaneous. And they decided they wanted to build their retirement home on the original farmstead. So they started the building process. I believe all in, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I would say it was probably a $200,000, $225,000 build. And they had taken out a construction loan to build it. My dad was the general contractor, or the person in charge. They built it, and both mom and dad had turned 62. That was the rule at the time. They had turned 62 as the building had come to a close in the process. We brought in Harlan and his team, and we sat down. The appraisal came in their case at, I believe it was a smidge over 400, as is. We took the construction loan and rolled it immediately into a reverse mortgage, which then paid up the house. They were 62 at the time, so I expect they would be there for 30 years based on our family longevity, and they will never have paid a single penny for the perfect retirement home that they built from scratch. It is a perfect example, in my opinion, of how to utilize a reverse mortgage when you don't need the money. It's just strategic. It was the right choice in terms of, rather than liquidating out land, or rather than cashing in an IRA or retirement funds, or having a mortgage that would have held them back at that level, we utilized an asset that otherwise would be no use to them in the 30 years that they would be living before they pass on. Genius plan, in my opinion.
What about you as an heir? Obviously you understood it, but what about the people that say, oh yes, but that hurts the next generation?
No. The reality is, and when we made the decision, there were 3 children in the family. Since then, we've lost a brother. But the reality is that neither my sister nor I will ever truly want to live in that piece of land. It's not going to happen. So 1, we weren't interested in investing in inheriting that house. Secondly, the true inheritance in my family is the land that is accruing in value over time. That's the true inheritance that is still there intact, because they didn't have to liquidate it to build their house. And third, if we change our minds, if at some point in time when mom and dad pass away, we change our minds, we want to move out there, I know that I can still purchase that property for just under fair market value, if I wanted to. So there's no harm to the family. There's no negative. There's a positive, because I don't have to mess with selling a house, which I'm not going to want to live in. So I like it. I like the way it was set up. Mom and dad are happy. They're living life well. They have no mortgage. They have their dream house. They have nothing going on that's causing them a drain on their retirement. Life is good. My sister and I are perfectly well taken care of, because there's technically more assets available. And I hope mom and dad spend every penny, but there's more there for them as they're living, and the potential of there being leftover value is higher, because they didn't have to take a large chunk of money out of their estate at 62. You take out $250,000 out of an estate at 62. You realize how much money that's created over time. The loss of the future buying power of that money is probably $1 million in a 30-year retirement. So it absolutely is beneficial to mom and dad, and that's what matters. It is absolutely not a negative to my sister or I, and we still have full access to do whatever we want to when the time comes for an appropriate price.
Well, thanks for that. That's an excellent, succinct explanation. And it's a perfect example of it. They're going to have less money, less equity in bucket 3, but they have more in bucket 2. So in the overall situation, it doesn't hurt them. They don't have the decrease in cash flow. And on the other side, whether or not, and Chris, of course, is not expecting it or needing it. She just wants her parents to have a great time, but there will actually be more left over at the end. So it's a benefit to both generations.
Or more importantly, more for them to spend.
That's right. That's maybe they'll get you a Christmas present.
I assure you that was plan number 1.
So Chris, let's come back to the long-term care scenario. And I'm going to switch ahead to a slide here that a lot of people still don't realize or understand. And that is this. Home health care, you may have some different numbers. We get different numbers. This was based on a 2016 Care Scout survey. I'm sure things have changed since then, but home health care, about $45,000 a year. Depends on which state you're in. Nursing home care, $92,000 for private. Assisted living facilities, $43,000. Most of those are over 50. How are people going to pay for this? Tell us about the options of what happens if you need care. Hopefully nobody on this call is ever going to need care, but there's a 50% chance that you will. How do we pay for that stuff?
Well, the reality is there's the 3 most popular ways that people plan for long-term care is 1, it's private pay. And I would actually refer to that as no plan whatsoever, 90% of the time. They just kind of stumble forward and they assume they'll be okay. And I would challenge that, be careful. It may be the right plan. I've helped plenty of people to have that as the proper plan, but people tend to forget about taxes and capital gains and the market and the values of property at certain times. So sometimes there's a bigger effect on an estate than people plan if they're trying to pay out of their pocket. And remember, probably on this call, no one is planning on walking into a facility tomorrow. It's hopefully 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. So whatever prices that Harlan is showing, you have to realize it's probably going to be double, if not more, by the time you need it. So private pay is a plan to paying out of your assets. The second most popular way of dealing with it is Medicaid. The reality is that a humongous amount of population will qualify for Medicaid, and this is not Medicare, this is Medicaid. Once you have run out of money, you have come down to whatever your state's limit is, you're going on the state to take care. Now, if you think there's going to be more care available on federal assets in the future than there is today, please realize that's not the case. Medicaid was built for those who have nothing. It was never built for those who have it and quick try and hide it. It doesn't work that way. And I used to teach a kind of financial Medicaid planning to advisors. There's just not a lot available anymore. So then you are left with the long-term care answers. And I would say this is about as exciting for people to talk about as a root canal. No one enjoys it. I groan just as much as you do, but the reality is here we are in this conversation. When it comes to long-term care, you have a couple of choices. You can go the traditional route, which is you're picking $1 daily value, the elimination period, how long it's going to pay. The biggest objection that people have in buying traditional long-term care is 1, it's expensive. And 2, if you have it for 27 years, you don't use it, you pass away of a heart attack after getting an eagle on a beautiful golf course. The great part is you eagled. The sad part is you just dumped 27 years worth of premiums down the drain. However, the reality is knowing what long-term care will do if you need it, I will guarantee you, if you could have a long-term care policy and have it for free, you would own them. You'd own 1, you'd own 2, because we understand what it does if you need it. So my advice to you is to be sure you are thorough in your conversations about all of the options for long-term care now. 10 years ago, we had a lot of companies doing pretty much the same thing. In today's world, you have multiple versions of it. You have traditional long-term care, you have hybrid long-term care, you have asset-based long-term care, you have life insurance that have living benefits on it, you have traditional, you have chronic riders. There are a number of different, I think I deal with probably 20 different companies that do different versions. Which one should you have? I don't know because I don't know you well enough. But if you have a good conversation based on who you are and what you have, and if you have a good distribution plan that says you know that the two of you will be okay in terms of living and being well, then you find the assets that are available to take care of you. Whether that be assets that you have set aside, whether that be income, or whether that be equity is yet to be determined. But the reality is you have to establish who you are and acknowledge that this problem does exist and it's not going to go away. And then have a plan. And your equity could well be the right answer. And it's usually not to hurry up and sell your house. People think they're just going to sell the house. You can't sell a house like a fire sale. You're going to get beat up. So this is a way, having these conversations provides a way to potentially create an income stream that would help offset the cost. It could finally give you a way of removing your mortgage, which would free up dollars to create a solution, or it could actually provide the dollars you need to pay the facility when the time comes. It can really be a very dynamic tool if you just spend some time and think outside the box a little.
I think that's a lot of people just don't realize that there's a lot of tools in the toolbox, and they only know about the old scenario of you pay in so much for 27 years and you get nothing out of it.
Right.
I happen to have all four of us kids who dealt with my mom and dad. I want to do some true confessions here. I told my parents not to get long-term care long before I was in the business, long before I met you, long before I knew what I was talking about. I was ignorant. And I told mom and dad, you don't need long-term care. First of all, you're healthy. Look at grandpa lived to be 100 and he never had any problems. He died in his sleep. And, don't worry about it. Well, guess what? Dad had a stroke at 86. Mom's Alzheimer's went over the cliff and everything changed that night. And fortunately, in that situation, we had a reverse mortgage line of credit on their house and we had money and we used their home equity to keep them at home. And that's something that I want to touch on is a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to use my home and I'll sell it. As Chris just said, I'm just going to sell it and that will take care of my long-term care or assisted living. Well, what if you want to live in your home? What if you don't want to go to a nursing home and die in a COVID pandemic? That was one of the least safe places to be in the last 8 months. So the issue is that it doesn't make sense to say, I'm going to store all of my money in my house in bucket 3, and then I'm going to pull it out whenever I need to sell my house and move to long-term care. It makes sense to do that beforehand. It would have been much more efficient if my mom and dad would have bought long-term care instead of me talking about it. And of course, I told them, I'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. When dad had his stroke, I had 4 young kids at home and they were in sports and I was running back and forth and a business to run and everything else. I didn't have time to take care of mom and dad. They needed 24-hour full-time care. And we use the money to use home care to keep them at home. But most people simply are not aware of, first of all, how expensive it is. And remember, you have to be broke. You have to go past the 5-year look back. What Chris was just mentioning, there just isn't that many options to be able to qualify for Medicaid when you're not there. And one of the points that's very interesting is Chris and I did a lot of seminars together about insurance and about reverse mortgages. And it's funny because one of the questions just came in and says, not all of my prospects need or want life insurance. Guess what? Not all prospects need or want reverse mortgages. In fact, nobody wants to buy insurance. Nobody wants to buy a reverse mortgage, but everybody wants to not run out of money before they run out of life. And everybody wants to make sure that they're properly cared for when they are the least vulnerable. If you want to clear a room, you can just do a webinar or set up a room as we often did, and just say we're going to talk about nothing but life insurance and reverse mortgages. Nobody'd show up. But when they realize that that's part of the tools, that's really what is critically important to understand. So one of the things that we had talked about before is the long-term care costs. Some people have certain money set aside, and let's say you're an RICP. And so when I have, let's say that I need $400,000 or $500,000 just to take care of my lifestyle. And now you come along and say, well, you're going to have to take some of that money to take care of long-term care. So what we work with people all the time is say, from your house, we'll pay you $2,000 a month or $1,500 a month, which then frees up that other money that keeps the portfolio intact. And that's really using all of those things together. So talk a little bit about the fact that we're not talking about pulling $100,000 out of the house and dumping it into an annuity or into a life insurance policy. We're talking about making sure that you're getting money from your house so you can properly utilize the assets that as an RICP, you manage the income and the protection. That's juggling two things.
Yeah, I think the old, back in the day of all traditional long-term care, and there's nothing wrong with it, but back in that day, the philosophy, at least the one that I used, was always you let your estate pay to protect itself. So the theory would be your asset category would be so many dollars. It was generating X percentage on an annual basis. You needed X percentage of that left a leftover of. And out of that number of excess income, that's how you would fund the long-term care that would then create the underlying protection blanket of the entire estate. Using the reverse mortgage concept is no different. You're just using bucket number 3 to kick out a tax-free dribble of money out. I don't think anybody is in the world of moving large chunks of money out of the reverse mortgages. They shouldn't. This is about realizing the tool internally. And if you are in the insurance world, you understand the concept of cash value style life insurance, where the death benefit is the main benefit, but internally, there's some equity available in there to utilize. That would be distributed tax-free. The reverse mortgage is kind of the same feeling. Internally, if the reverse mortgage is done, it's creating a money market type tool with very safe guaranteed interest that happens to be growing at a better interest rate than everything on the planet as far as conservative tools, and it's tax-free. So if your equity can create an income stream just out of the interest, it creates a dribble of money on an annual basis or monthly that can come out and fund what's missing. And if that is some version of long-term care, more power to you. If it's traditional long-term care, then you know what you're buying. If you can utilize the hybrid style vehicles and on a monthly or annual basis create a death benefit that happens to be for chronic care, and I like defined benefit, black and white, here's what you're going to get, then it's even better because it's funding the contract that'll take care of you. But if it isn't necessary for care, well, then it just comes back to the family. But one way or the other, what you've purchased has value back to the estate or back to the heirs of the estate. So it really is a dynamic tool that it's not about selling life insurance, it's about protecting what needs to be done. And the reality is that long-term care, it isn't the equivalent of leaving a window open in the house. It's the equivalent of missing a wall. You're missing an entire wall. So we have got to do something to protect it. And this is a way of handling it. So I would strongly suggest we get past the idea of nobody wants to buy life insurance. No, nobody wants to buy life insurance. Nobody wants to buy long-term care. And yet, if the tool does the job, it's our job to help them understand. I don't care what you want to call it. It's like a root canal. But in the end, it's what you need. And here's how it works and how it benefits your family. And we have to be creative as advisors in saying, how do we put this puzzle together? How do we make it as efficient as we can? How do we make these people allow them to enjoy their retirement every last day until they pass away with less stress and less fear? And utilizing this reverse mortgage as a tool in addition to all the other tools. It's not the only tool, just like long-term care is not the only tool, but it's a great tool that doesn't get enough recognition. It can and should be used on a larger basis.
You know, you don't even know this, Chris, but there was a client that we were together on a number of years ago, and they called up about a year after we were at their kitchen table. And they had got a reverse mortgage and they had got a long-term care policy. And they called up and talked to my assistant about a year afterwards. And they said, hey, Linda, we just wanted to call and let you know that we just got back from the doctor's office. And Linda was like, okay, well, that's good to hear, but she didn't really know what it had to do with anything. She said, well, is there anything I can help you with? She said, no, we just wanted to call you because the doctor said that our checkup was one of the best ever. Our cholesterol was down, our blood pressure was down, everything was doing great. And they said, did you change your eating habits or what happened? And they said, no, we have a long-term care policy and a reverse mortgage and we don't worry anymore. So we're just healthier. That's what they told the doctor.
Really?
So I went to our legal team and I said, can we do a brochure that this lowers blood pressure and that it also decreases cholesterol? And the legal team voted that down.
No, I don't see that happening.
So,
it is true though. It is true. Peace of mind. The fear, remember, the number one fear in life is having to lose your independence and not being able to be where you want to be and do what you want to do. That is the number one fear in retirement. The number two one is running out of money. It's truly a big deal. So if you can eliminate, my job as a retirement lady is to eliminate the fear, to put in the defensive mechanisms for coming down the hill. So no matter how long the hill, no matter how short it is, no matter how bumpy it is, you know that you have peace of mind, that everything is in the right spot, and you go about life. And that is a beautiful thing.
Well, it is, because worrying about money is never a good thing, because all of the clients that you and I have dealt with, all of them know that they are going to run out of life at one point or another, and they're not as afraid of dying as they are about making sure that they can have that independence, and money is that independence to keep them through that time period. One guy told me that I'm just going to have my kids pay for that. I read an article that the biggest threat to your retirement is your parents' health. Can you elaborate a little bit of some of the things that you've seen, how that is a big factor?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the higher end clients. So I've got a surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon, that as his mother ailed, he put on an addition onto his house. Right behind me, actually, he put on an addition on his house for to the tune of $150,000. And then had her moved in, had the apartment all set up to her, and then was funding at about $4,000 a month for her to be cared for in that apartment that he built on his house. I have another friend, and this is a friend of mine and actually my personal physician. Her mother has Alzheimer's. She's been in a facility, a very nice, your chart here says assisted living facility at $43,000, not the nice ones. She's paying, I think right now, $9,500 a month in a beautiful assisted living facility. She has dementia. She no longer even knows who her daughter is. And she's paying out of her pocket. The daughter is paying that out of her pocket. So there are absolutely people doing it. Now, and I would also caution you, a lot of times people are so afraid of losing their assets. I just met somebody last night. I did a workshop with an elder law attorney, and a gentleman came up at the end of the presentation. He's like, can you answer a question? I talked to a guy, he's 61, he just retired, he had worked with me, and he told me he was super proud that he didn't have a single thing in his name anymore. Is that a good idea? I said, first of all, I don't know your friend, so this is not advice. I don't know the answer, but really, why would a 61-year-old person who statistically is going to be here for 20 years want to have nothing in their name? The fear of him losing his assets completely dominated all of his choices, and it was horrible. Where are those assets? In the hands of the kids who might have car accidents, who might have children that make mistakes, the liability now becomes the children. That's not healthy. We have to have a respectful fear for the reality of the risks that are out there, but you can't stop your life for something that may or may not happen. You have to be smart about taking care of yourself and then having a plan to deal with it if it does happen. There are ways to do it. And if you start having these conversations earlier than later, you're in much better shape. People don't seem to want to have conversations about what happens after retirement until they're already retired. No, you should be talking about it earlier and all the way through that process so you can see all of your options before you get there. It's really a big deal. Solving for long-term care is a conversation that should be starting earlier. It doesn't mean don't have it if you're already retired. It doesn't mean don't ask questions if you're already 80. It just means it's not something you should put off, because if you don't know about all of your options heading into that hill, you can't make good choices when you get there. So the reverse mortgage is a tool that should be talked about. And I know, and I've known Harlan a long time, and we don't, we agree on a lot of things and we sometimes disagree on things, and that's okay. But the reality is I value it as a tool. I value a trusted, knowledgeable advisor that understands the reverse mortgage. And I have brought Harlan and I together, and Harlan has brought me to him a number of times in our past because it's the right choice. And as advisors, our job is to see all of the puzzle pieces. And in some cases, we need to put pieces on the table that the client doesn't realize could be used. And often, the reverse mortgage is there. So that's my job. My job is to solve problems. So I need to know what all the pieces are and try and be as helpful as I can be. And I think everybody in every industry should be trying to do that.
Well, and the advantage of working with our team and the team at NAIFA is there's a whole bunch of Chris and Harlans out there. We might think that we're the smartest people around, but we're not. There's a lot of, I know Chris is, but I know I'm not. But the issue is that there's NAIFA members in every nook and cranny. There's 25,000 NAIFA members. Right. We have over 4,500 loan officers and 600 offices all over the country where somebody like Chris and Harlan can sit at your kitchen table and go through and ask these questions that are knowledgeable and that are bound by the code of ethics in looking at things from a true caring perspective of what's best for you, not what's best for commissions or what's best for our companies, but overall what is best for you. Because if we help enough people, we get the reputation where obviously people call us because they make sure they know that with, as Suzanne mentioned in the beginning, the NAIFA kind of the good housekeeping seal of approval, we can't be NAIFA members if we're out there ripping people off and not doing things right according to what should be done from a fiduciary standpoint.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great things about NAIFA, and what I would say this, NAIFA has worked really hard at making sure the industry, the insurance and advisors across the country are as well educated as they possibly can be. It is one of NAIFA's primary drivers is to add value and educate and develop along with that code of ethics. So I know in Wisconsin, we have utilized Harlan's expertise for years, bringing him in and helping. Again, you have to teach an advisor about what puzzle pieces are there. There's an awful lot of people that, whether they're non-NAIFA members or not, that don't have the advantage. They haven't been given the opportunity to learn and understand different tools and get past what we think we know and start listening to what we do. It really is an important thing. You must be well-rounded. You can't live in a bubble as an advisor. We have to understand there are other people out there, there are other tools out there, and if we work together to bring all the tools to the table, our clients are the best situation we can find, and that brings us more clients in the long run because we are good people doing good things.
Yes, the old story is you do well by doing good, but you don't just, that doesn't just drop into your lap. You have to be doing well and helping other folks first. And obviously that's what the folks at NAIFA do. Right. Now, this is not, and by the way, we're down to the last 15 minutes. And so if you have questions, either go in the Q&A box or the chat box and ask it. It's free advice. Both Chris and I have been in this for too many decades to count, and so we won't go into those details. But there's a reason why I have gray hair, and there's a reason why Chris, well, yeah, that's kind of, we don't know what the real color is. But the bottom line is that this is not about selling you a reverse mortgage. This is not about selling you a traditional monthly long-term care premium policy or a lump sum hybrid policy or the universal life insurance. But this is about something that we know a lot about, and that is something called the mortgage drain. You saw in the promotional material that we sent out, what is the single biggest cost in retirement? You probably thought it was healthcare. It's not until the last 3 years of your life. The biggest single cost of anybody's retirement is housing during the 30, 40 years of retirement, from 60 to 100 or 60 to 90, whatever the situation is. We can reduce that cost. And a lot of people say, well, my payment is only $950 a month, which will be lower now because, of course, the interest rates are like 3% instead of 4%. But let's just go with this. If you have a $200,000 mortgage, people say it's no big deal. It's only $950 a month. And then we can afford that. And maybe you can. But think about how much that is. That's really almost $350,000 over a period of retirement. Imagine if you put $350,000 into a universal life policy or $350,000 into some of those other scenarios. That is much more efficient. People that put money into bucket 2 end up with 3 things. I've worked with a lot of people a whole lot smarter than myself, Chris included, not hard to find somebody smarter than me. But the issue is I've learned a lot from them that if you do a reverse mortgage and you start using money from bucket 3, you will end up with more cash flow. That's obvious. You're not paying out $950 a month or $10,000 a year. You'll end up with paying less in taxes because none of the money that comes out of a reverse mortgage is taxable. You will also end up with a higher net worth, less equity, but more cash, just like we talked about Chris's parents. But think about that for a minute. If you do not send $350,000, what else would you do with it? Well, you could enjoy life with it. You would have $900. You can buy some very nice life insurance policies with long-term care riders or hybrid policies by putting away $10,000 a year and putting it into something that actually protects what is there rather than something that causes you to lose it. Now, there's a couple of questions that have come in. If you have, Leslie asked 2 different questions, and both of these are for you, Chris. Is long-term care insurance still available? Many companies are no longer selling it. We've seen that in the magazines. Talk a little bit about what is available, and then I'll do the follow-up question that she had as well.
Yeah, I would say the short answer to that, is long-term care still available, is yes. Traditional long-term care, there are far fewer companies that offer it today than did in the past. And the first thing that I would let you to take away from that is, does an insurance company ever stop selling something that is a profit to them? No. Companies stop selling something because they can't make enough money on it. In essence, there's more claims going out than they are willing to pay. That should tell you something as a consumer. That's a big deal. Traditional long-term care is thinner than it used to be. There are still good options out there. But on a large sense, I don't use it as much as I used to because, again, as a distribution lady, I like to know if we're going to put something in something, we're going to get something out of it, and I like to be able to do the math. The only question in my side is, when will it take place? I am a fan of the life-based chassis with a living benefit. Now, I like a black and white benefit. I don't like insurance companies to make up their own mind as to what you need when the time comes. There are companies out there that have much clearer defined benefits. So you can pick and choose. Talk to someone who has a full gamut of those contracts available. Lump sum life sometimes is a good choice also. I don't use them as often, but oftentimes you can purchase for one chunk of assets of the right flavors. You can have joint benefits. So there is value in them. I would say the lump sum asset-based are more long-term care forward. The life insurance with living benefits riders are more equal, where it's death benefit and long-term care or chronic care, but a little bit less long-term care forward, but more of a easier math when it comes to internal rate of return.
Thank you for that. And she also asks, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the shield and how the reverse mortgage fits into this, and realize I wrote an article for NAIFA a while in the magazine last month that advisors that don't talk to each other are really guilty of malpractice. You can see how people like Chris and I are looking at 2 different things. She knows a whole lot about an area that I don't know much about, and vice versa, but together we can accomplish a lot for the client. So the important thing is making sure that you're working with advisors that work together. Chris mentioned about doing a presentation last night with an elder law attorney. We work with elder law attorneys, we work with accountants and CPAs and the people in other areas of expertise. You want a team working together for you, not just one person, because no one person knows everything. So one of the questions that were thrown out is, by the time you get to retirement, if you have multiple 401ks, is it a good idea to consolidate them together?
I'm not sure that that I should answer the question exactly, not knowing the rest of the details, but I will say that oftentimes simplification has value. Sometimes you'll see if you have 3 different accounts with 3 different organizations, the fees might be higher, whereas combining some may make sense. You may find that you just don't want to deal with a lot of different paperwork. And if you have 3 separate accounts, you have 3 different sets of RMDs. They're different registration classes, which means you may or may not be able to aggregate them. So there's a lot of reasons. I would say that is a better question for the person that you're working with, but it's not there's not an automatic answer to that. So there should be more questions asked.
And that really leads us into the point that I want to make, and make sure you throw in the questions, because there isn't any question that we won't try to answer it. If not, if I don't know the answer, I'll just have Chris answer it. But the issue is that a lot of people don't realize, Chris was talking about the person who put everything into somebody else's name so that they wouldn't have anything, so they couldn't lose anything. Well, they've already lost everything. One of the things that people need to understand is the pre-planning that can be done and should be done in conjunction with the legal aspect and insurance aspect and so on, because you've all heard the thing that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You need to do that pre-planning. Well, one of the things that happens when you take out a reverse mortgage, even if you don't need the money, you're not going to use any of it today because you don't need it. That was my parents. They had a $200,000 home, but when they took out a reverse mortgage, we put on 300% on the top of mortgages. That doesn't mean they owed $600,000. They only owed what they were using, which ended up being about $150,000 by the time they passed away with what they used for the long-term care. But what we do is we install a faucet on the side of the house, which helps with that income that we're talking about. So you can use the other money for the tools that we talked about that Chris has. So we put a standard mortgage on, and then we put a Federal Housing Administration mortgage over the top. And then we set up a line of credit that can be used and pulled out whenever it's needed for whatever it's needed in a tax-free way. That also protects the community spouse. Both of us, all of us have heard about things where I was sitting in Scottsdale just about a year ago with a widow lady crying at her table, sitting in a $600,000 paid off house. And they had no money left. They were millionaires when they retired, but she had no money left. They paid cash for the house. They had no liquidity. He burned up a lot of the money when he went to the nursing home before he died. And here, all she had was the house. Fortunately, we could put a reverse mortgage on it and give her some income, but we did it right before a lien was going to be placed on the house from Medicaid. If that lien would have been placed on the house, there would have been no faucet installed, and we couldn't give that lady any money at all. That's something that happens in many times, because people say, well, they can't take my house away if my husband goes in. Well, that's true. They can't take it away, but they can put a lien on it, which doesn't allow you to properly use it. So when you're doing long-term care planning, estate tax planning, any kind of asset protection planning, this can be an integral part of how that goes together because of the community spouse issue. And one of the things that gets me going every morning when my feet hit the floor when I get out of bed is to be thinking about the widows. 1 out of 5 widows in this country, 20% of widows, are in poverty, and most of them have never been there before. If you're a man listening to this call, and I don't want to get sexist about this, but this is the statistics. If you're a man and you don't care about your wife, then don't do anything about what we just talked about. But the chances of her outliving you and you leaving your spouse with a problem at the end is a very likely situation. I was working with somebody in Colorado Springs, and he said, we're fine. We don't have any problems. When I took a look at what was going to happen with his Social Security, that was the only thing she was going to get, and his pension going away, their income was going to go from $5,000 down to $1,400 a month, and their mortgage payment was $1,200. As long as he's alive, we're in good shape. As soon as he dies, she's got to figure out whether or not she's going to be able to hang on the house, because they only had $150,000 left in bucket 2. Chris, can you talk a little bit about the widows that you've dealt with, and if the right decisions would have been made by us dumb men a little bit earlier, that things would be a little bit better off for them in their 70s, 80s, and 90s?
Yeah, I'll stay away from those. But I will say it's a big deal. And so oftentimes, again, without good advice, and I would say it happens more often when decisions are made without good advice. I will often see, not as much perhaps as I used to, but the husband retires. Many times the husband is a couple to a handful of years older. The husband was the primary breadwinner. You have his Social Security is larger. They didn't necessarily take a fancy strategy heading into Social Security. Oftentimes he retires early because his body is worn out or just needs to be done at 62. He then will take a maximum pension because his Social Security is short. So now he takes a life only with maybe a 10, 15 year certain on it, if that. Then when he passes away, heaven forbid, in his mid to late 70s, which is about appropriate, then the wife, who is 5 years younger, who is in pretty good health, her life expectancy after that is another probably 10 years beyond that, if not more. She now has a 62-year-old early Social Security that has been growing. That's her largest one, so her Social Security is small. The pension is usually about to run out or maybe has 5 more years left. I just did a plan last night where the pension runs out. He thought he had a joint lifetime income pension. It's for $4,000 a month. It's not. It was it runs out in 7 years. That's not good. It does happen. It happens far more often than you think. Again, no one on this planet is built to read insurance contracts. Mistakes are made by advisors. Mistakes are made by consumers. You have to be in good hands, not blindly trusting, but get help before you retire to look at all of your tools and all of your options.
You know, that's such a solid advice. And as we come into the last few minutes of our webinar tonight, and for those of you that are listening on Facebook as well, don't just say, well, that was kind of interesting. Do something about it. Anywhere in the country, we have a NAIFA member and we have a loan officer that knows this stuff that costs you nothing to talk to. Are we going to try to sell you something? No, we're going to ask you a bunch of questions. And we might sell you nothing or tell you to do something else or put you in touch with a real estate agent, and because maybe you want to sell your house, whatever the situation is. We don't have a predetermined product to sell. We look at, as Chris said, her job is to solve problems. That's what any of our jobs are. Whenever somebody is trying to sell you something without trying to solve a problem that you have and find a problem that you have, that is dangerous. And so if you contact us at the reverse events at fairwaymc.com, if you have a question for Chris, I'll pass it on to her as well. Just let us know, what is it that you have some questions on, what you might be wondering about, how does this fit in? And I'm kind of confused more than ever. We can get you a recording of this tonight if you want to share it with your kids over Thanksgiving or Christmas, if you're lucky enough to see them with what's going on with COVID. But make sure that your kids understand what's going on and what your plans are, and involve them. We don't want to do this in a vacuum. We want to make sure that your whole family is involved with some of these decisions if you want them to be. But this is some critically important stuff. Think about when I got that call that night at 2 a.m. when my dad had a stroke and died 2 years later and was completely disabled from that point on. There was not enough planning that went on. Fortunately, we were better than most, but that was the most difficult 2 years of my life. What are we going to do with mom? She's got Alzheimer's. She can't live on her own. We had to hire somebody to come in right away. I was the closest kid there, and all of a sudden I had a whole lot more responsibilities than what I could handle, and it was overwhelming emotionally. It was overwhelming from just what do we do next? And I'm in this business, and I understood stuff, and it was still hard. make sure you're doing pre-planning. So when something like that happens, it doesn't make it any easier from an emotional standpoint, but it makes it a lot easier from a logistical and monetary standpoint. Because when something like that happens, that's what we are there for. That's why we make sure that we're going to be planning for that day. And if it never happens, at least we're prepared, and it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. I'll check the box for any other questions, but we're just about up to the time limit. Chris, any other comments that you would like to have as kind of a call to action and encouragement after all of those years of sitting at kitchen tables like I have?
Yeah, my advice is begin conversations sooner than you think. Begin them with your family. Begin them with trusted advisors. NAIFA is a great organization. I've been around it for a long time and truly love the people that I've gotten to know through them. It's a great resource. Start to ask questions, start to get some answers. Your kids will always give the answer, don't worry about it, we don't need it, or we'll take care of you. Don't put that on them. Help them help you by looking into the options early on. The earlier you have the conversations, the better chance you have of getting good results.
So I'd like to thank both of you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a really phenomenal discussion, and I think I would just echo everything you're saying. We at NAIFA are really trying to, again, empower consumers. Ask the questions, go get that help, go ask. It's not gonna, there's no risk to you, right? But you deserve to know, and you deserve to have the best options out there. And we want to make sure that we're helping, doing our part to giving that to you, because that is something that we firmly believe in and have for 130 years. With no further ado, I'd like to thank everyone so much. Take care, be well, and we'll see you next time. Good night.
Thank you.